floor is open, sir.
You've been on machine.
All right, where is Mr. Williams? It's coming right here.
All who are present, vote aye. Okay, the clerk, we have a quorum. The clerk will close the roll. First of all, I want to welcome everybody here. This is called the Committee on the Judiciary. It's a new name. Hope people get used to it. I've advised that every other state in the country, just about, if not all of them, use the term judiciary. And of course, in Washington, that's what Congress does, the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. I want to announce a couple of things. First of all, we're delighted that Steve Benjamin is returning as counsel to the committee. We refer to him as Senator Steve Benjamin.
No, Mr. Chairman, I've received not a single vote.
And we appreciate his service over the years, and appreciate the fact that he's willing to come back. In addition, we have staff attorneys to the committees are Charles Quigliato, who's here, raise your hand, Charles, and Kristen Walsh, raise your hand. Thank you all. And the clerk for the committee is John Garrett. John? And he will be assisted by Alec Fishbein. There you go. And thank you all for being here today. And thank you everyone in the audience. We have 208 bills in the committee, and we're expecting more through the end of the week. We have 9 scheduled committee meetings before crossover, so you see we have a very busy schedule. I want to suggest that any senator who would like to have the bill carried over, by all means, do so. We have a busy schedule today, and carrying over a bill would probably help us out. In addition, if you need substitutes or amendments, please see staff, the DLS, to come up with your substitutes and your amendments. And see Charles or Kristen. They'll be happy to help you with that regard. First of all, we have some bills to be re-referred to other committees. Senate Bill 149, Senator Howell's bill regarding courthouse and courthouse security and assessments, that will be re-referred to the Committee on Finance and Appropriations without objection.
We need a roll call.
Okay, all right, roll call. All right, it's moved and seconded. All in favor of re-referring Senate Bill 149 to the Committee on Finance and Appropriations, vote aye. Recorded vote. Okay, motion carries. All right. Senate, well, we could do it in a block. All right, the next bill is Senate Bill 168, the Steff's Bill, Line of Duty Act. That will be referred to the Committee on Finance and Appropriations. Senate Bill 170 is Senator Locke's bill, Public Schools, School Resource Officers, and School Security Officers be re-referred to the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 171, Senator Locke's bill on School Resource Officers to be re-referred to the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 204, Senator Lucas's bill regarding redistricting, role of the Supreme Court of Virginia, re-referred to the Committee on Privileges and Elections. Senate Bill 297, Senator Frovola's bill, Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Prevention Fund, to be re-referred to the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion to re-refer the bills as stated, vote aye. Motion carries. Oops, go ahead.
That's 12, no, 0.
Okay.
My thing went blank.
I'll help you.
Senator Saslaw's thing went blank. Okay. There we go. I'm advised that Senator Cosgrove, Senate Bill 55 regarding sexual offenders and emergency shelters, that he would like to strike that bill at the request of the patron. Is there a motion?
It's back.
I'm sorry?
My screen.
Okay. Is there a motion that we strike Senate Bill 55, Senator Cosgrove's bill regarding sexual offenders and emergency shelters? Then moved. Is there a second? All in favor of the motion to strike Senator Cosgrove's bill, vote aye. All opposed, no. Okay,
Ayes 13, no 0.
okay. Thank you. Okay. Now, we have a number of bills that I expect many people are here to hear. And we're going to do a number of gun bills, for lack of a better word, firearm bills first. We have a number of them. And what we'll do is call the bill, and then we will have the patron to explain the bill, and maybe staff explain if necessary. And then each side will get 5 minutes to speak for the bill, and then 5 minutes to speak against the bill, in that order. Okay? So the first bill is...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. Chairman, one of our members, Senator Stanley, my understanding is, discussed with the chair the prospect of postponing these bills because of his inability to be here today. And that my understanding was that it was agreed that the bills would not be put on the calendar today. And indeed, my understanding is that they were not initially on the calendar, but that they were a late addition to the calendar. And it would be my hope that the commitment that I think was made to Senator Stanley would be actually honored.
Yeah.
I certainly always did that.
Yeah. I want to apologize to Senator Stanley. It's right. That's what I said. And then after that, and Friday afternoon, decisions were made to go ahead and put it on the calendar. So apologize to him. He
Mr.
can't be here
Chairman.
today or tomorrow. Yeah.
Has there been a change in the rules, and does the chair of the committee no longer control the docket?
No, the chair controls the docket.
Well, then I would respectfully request that these bills go by for the day in accordance with the agreement that the chair made with a member of the committee.
There's a motion that's been made for them to go by for the day. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, yes. Senator Norman.
not mincing words, but you indicated that on Friday, a decision had been made to go in a different direction. Who in fact made that decision after you had represented to Senator Stanley that the bills were going to be carried over until Wednesday?
We had meetings with my caucus, and there's a strong feeling we should go today. That's the reason.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
May I
yes,
follow
Senator,
up?
yes, Senator Norman, no?
So are we devolving into a situation where caucuses are going to take votes to override the discretion and prerogative of a chairman to administer her or his committee?
No, that's not the case, but I told you what happened, and give my apologies to Senator Stanley. Okay. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, this has been an extraordinary day for a lot of reasons. The Rules Committee, I think on Friday, without any notice or forewarning or sharing of any copies of the policy, adopted a policy that really changed a long-standing practice of the General Assembly welcoming with open arms members of the community from across Virginia into the building to meet with legislators. Today, you know, a lot of things have happened that I think are inconsistent with and represent a real change of course. And, you know, members on the other side may say that, well, we told you that change in course was coming, and indeed it has. But, you know, we've welcomed with open arms citizens from across Virginia into this building for decades. And today we are being somewhat less than hospitable. Moreover, I know that members of our staff queued up in line outside of the building for some in excess of an hour to try and get in the building because of this new era and this new concern about safety from people who've worked for us for decades. My member of staff got pulled out of the line because she had a necklace on. My administrative assistant, one of the legislative services people, I understand, got pulled out of line because They had metal buttons on their
Mr.
jacket.
Chair.
And I will not yield. My understanding further is that the policy exempted members of the General Assembly. However, I understand that administration officials are blowing through the queue at the door of the General Assembly building in violation of the rules that were adopted on Friday afternoon. All of
Chair, point
this
of order.
is
Point of order.
consistent with my motion to pass these by. We're just walking away from tradition here. And I think it's really regrettable when a chair of the committee makes a representation, particularly with respect to hot-button issues like those that we are about to address, issues that address parts of the Bill of Rights. I think that those commitments ought to be honored, that the people of Virginia, that members of the General Assembly ought to be able to rely on those commitments. So I would really hope that we set aside partisanship, that we set aside feelings about these particular bills, whether it's today or Wednesday. I strongly suspect that the majority's got the votes to pass these bills, any bill that they want. And I don't think it's worth undermining the relationships and the commitments that we make just to ram these things down our throats and the throats of the people of Virginia.
Okay.
Mr.
Is there
Chair.
any further discussion? Yeah,
Call the
Senator
pending
Peterson.
question. Call the pending question.
All right, pending question's been called. It's not debatable. All in favor of the pending question, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the pending question is before us. The question is whether to extend these gun bills to another time. That's a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Or rather, vote aye. All in favor, opposed, vote no. Okay, the clerk will, the clerk will close the roll. Wait. Strike the motion is to pass the gun bills by for the day? For the day, okay. All right, all in favor of the motion to pass it by for the day, vote aye. All opposed, vote no.
Yes.
Okay, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 5, noes 9.
Okay, the motion fails. Okay, we'll have the first bill is Senate Bill. First of all, I'd like to call on Senator Saslaw. It's not actually on the calendar, but Senator Saslaw would like to move to strike Senate Bill 16, the assault weapons bill.
I'll so moved.
Okay. All right, Senator Saslaw, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that Senator Saslaw.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Saslaw's assault
Chairman,
weapons bill.
point of
Just
order.
a minute. Senate Bill 16 be stricken from the calendar.
Point of order, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
yes.
How are we able to strike a bill that's not on the calendar?
Yeah.
It's not on the docket, it's not here.
Yeah, it's
People
not-
have come to be able to redress their views. How can, we're going to jam things through that you promised we would wait until Wednesday to take up, but yet you're going to put something up for a vote that's not even on the calendar? That's in violation of the rules.
Yeah. But he wants to strike it. Yeah. Yeah, we just did one with Cosgrove. Struck his bill, and Senator Saslaw has moved to strike the assault weapons bill of Senate Bill 16.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman.
point of order.
Mr.
Senator
Yes.
Cosgrove's bill was on the docket for today, for the public to know. If the bill is not on the docket, the point of order is that it cannot be taken up for a motion.
I renew my motion to strike.
All right, his motion is before us.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much. Having some vague familiarity with the rules of the Senate, there is no question that in order for a bill to be considered by a committee, the bill must be before the committee and it needs to be docketed. And I respect any senator that wants to strike her or his bill. But the question is that it needs to appear on a docket, that if somebody from the public wants to speak against that or in support of it, which may be highly improbable that they have the opportunity. And I just suggest, I am probably more temperate than some about the transition of majorities, but I am saying that the direction that we are taking this morning with representations from the chair to a member of the committee to be overruled by a caucus vote, to now start striking or dealing in any way positively or negatively with a bill that it's not on the docket, is not complimentary of the institution that we have worked for years to uphold. And I just encourage the members perhaps to adhere to the rules and the tradition that we have followed in the Senate. And I would say, with all due respect to my friend, and I mean this sincerely, whether Senator Sasslaw strikes this bill this morning or it's docketed for Wednesday is totally irrelevant, because it's going to be the same consequence. So I respect it, but I hope that we are not trying to jam this through just to reinforce a majority that I respectfully recognize.
Okay. The motion is before us to strike Senate Bill 16, the assault weapons bill of Senator Sasslaw. Are you ready to vote? All in favor of the vote, all in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 9, no 0.
Okay, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just remind the committee that the rules do not permit a bill to be taken up that is not on the docket. Thus, no vote actually occurred, and that's the reason I did not vote, because there's no motion to vote on.
Okay, all right. The next bill to come up would be Senator Locke's bill, one gun a month bill, Senate Bill 69. And I understand Senator Saslaw's bill, Senate Bill 22, he's moving to roll Senate Bill 22 into Senate Bill 69. Is that correct?
Say that again.
Roll your
Yes.
one gun a month bill. And is there a second to that motion? All right, all in favor of rolling Senate Bill 22 into Senate Bill 69, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Roll call vote? Yeah, all right, the motion is made to roll Senate Bill 22 into Senate Bill 69. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no. And to make both of them chief co-patrons of the bill. Okay. The clerk will close.
13, no 0.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Senator Locke, would you like to explain your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 69 prohibits any person who is not a licensed firearms dealer from purchasing more than one handgun in a 30-day period, and establishes such an offense as a Class 1 misdemeanor. What this bill does is it reinstates Virginia's successful one handgun a month law and prohibits individuals from purchasing more than one handgun within a 30-day period. Until 2012, it was unlawful in Virginia to purchase more than one handgun per month. For 19 years, while this law was in place, prior to 2012, public safety was enhanced not only in Virginia, but in our neighboring states as well. ATF data show that 35% of all guns seized in criminal investigations in the Northeast and purchased prior to July 1993 could be traced back to Virginia. After the one handgun a month law took effect, only 16% could be traced back to Virginia, a 54% reduction in the number of Virginia guns recovered in criminal investigations in the Northeast. The percentage of guns in New York traced back to Virginia decreased from 38.2% prior to the one handgun a month law to 15.3%. From 2012 to 2014, Virginia had the nation's 9th highest rate of crime guns exported to other states, with a rate 61% higher than the national average. In 2016, Virginia was identified as the #1 source state for guns trafficked in New York. Virginia has consistently been identified as a major source state for crime guns recovered in other states. In fact, Virginia is the top source state for crime guns in the District of Columbia, Maryland, New York, and West Virginia. Currently, there is no limitation on the number of handguns that can be purchased each month. which creates an avenue for gun traffickers or straw purchasers to stockpile weapons. We know that legally purchased weapons are often diverted illegally into our communities, contributing to the day-to-day gun violence emergency we are facing in the Commonwealth. Limiting handgun purchases to one per month will help to stem the illegal flow of firearms into vulnerable communities and improve public safety. If enacted, this bill would allow law-abiding citizens to purchase up to 12 handguns during any given calendar year. This legislation would help to curtail handgun trafficking and stockpiling by reinstating the one handgun a month law. Governor Northam's budget includes a general fund appropriation and 10 positions at the Virginia State Police to implement this law in conjunction with several other related bills.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the patron? Okay. Now, we have a number of people I gather would like to speak on the bill. We're going to limit to 5 minutes per side. All in favor of speaking in favor of the bill, please line up. Secretary Moran is here, and I'll start the timer. 5 minutes per side. Thank you, Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. On behalf of Governor Northam, we strongly support this legislation for all the reasons that Senator Locke has mentioned. This is an evidence-based response. In 1993, the actions of this legislation in response to reducing the amount of guns trafficked to other states, it worked. The evidence indicates it worked. And once that limitation was eliminated, we've gone right back to being #1 source to other states. And so this is the appropriate reaction to that evidence, and I'd ask the committee to take favorable action on the Senator's bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Mr.
Senator
Secretary.
Obenshain.
Mr. Secretary,
Yes, Senator.
it's really good to see you this morning. I'm glad you were able to get in.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Senator.
Just a question, were members of the administration required to go through screening this morning to get into the building?
A number of members, yes, Ms.
Were you?
I will talk to the Capitol. I did not. I went through screening. I did go through the metal detector, Senator. But I will talk to the Colonel Pike. We've had numerous, I will tell you, there are resources in this building from the state. There are numerous state police here, numerous Capitol Police doing a phenomenal job. And
I didn't ask that. They absolutely do a great job. My question is whether the administration staff is bypassing the rules that were adopted on Friday and blowing through the screening stations, because I had reports that that was the case.
Happy to discuss that with you, Mr. Senator.
Okay. Any other questions of the Secretary? Okay. Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Toby Heitens. I'm the Solicitor General of Virginia. Attorney General Herring strongly supports this legislation. We believe it is constitutional, and we will defend it vigorously if the body were to enact it. I can say that I went through screening this morning. I passed through the metal detectors. Thank you.
Did you pass? Good. Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. We support the bill for the reasons given. We have a trafficking problem in Virginia, and it's not just for trafficking to other states. We have an intrastate trafficking problem. We supply our own criminals with their guns.
Okay. Next.
Good morning. My name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We certainly support the bill. We know that a number of firearms that get into many communities disproportionately affected by gun violence are in the unregulated market, and this will go far to begin to clamp down on that unregulated market. We hope to have a yes vote from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Molly Voigt. I'm with Giffords, the gun violence prevention organization founded by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. And we're proud to support this bill and look forward to your yes vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Kelsey Rogers of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We're in strong support of this legislation. Look forward to your yes vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Pam Pouchot. I'm with Peninsula Indivisible, York County. We do support this bill. We want to cut down on the number of illicit guns that are being trafficked up and down the East Coast. Virginia should not be the state that provides them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tim Farber with the Medical Society of Virginia, and MSV supports this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else on the pro side? All right. We'll then set the timer for those against the bill. Please stand up and come before the committee, and we'll start it when the first one begins to speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Philip Van Cleve, President of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. All I know is when we had this bill or this law in place, New York was still complaining. Virginia was just pumping guns up there. In reality, I don't think this is going to make any more difference now than it did then. They were complaining. The biggest source of guns in New York is New York. The biggest source of illegal guns in New Jersey is New Jersey. By far, they're getting their own guns from their own states. That's typical. But this also affects millions of law-abiding gun owners, makes them jump through hoops. We've been through these hoops, and this is a waste of time. We oppose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is David Adams. I represent the Virginia Shooting Sports Association, the NRA State Affiliate Association. We are opposed to this bill. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has indicated through numerous studies that the main source of illegal guns for criminals is to steal those firearms. It's not through the legal sales of individuals who go and purchase through FFLs. We oppose this bill and urge you to vote against it.
Okay, next. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Pyle. I'm a citizen of Dinwiddie County. I oppose this bill based on several merits. The old bill that they talked about, that the distinguished representative talked about, was exempted concealed weapons permit carriers from this particular bill. 80% of gun violence is gang-related. 32,000 people nationwide were killed by guns. 60% were suicides. 3% accident, 4% justified homicides, 33% are homicides. Take away from that 80%, you leave 1,700 people out of 312 million people killed by gun violence, which is a 0.000102% chance, if you're not in a gang, of getting hurt by a gun. This bill will do nothing to stop gun violence.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
And this is a question perhaps for Senator Benjamin, but I'm looking at line 270 of Senate Bill 69, and it says the provisions of this subsection shall not apply to persons that hold a Virginia concealed carry permit.
Right.
So
Okay.
that,
Right.
thank you. Just
Yeah.
clarifying that.
Next speaker.
Good morning, sir. DJ Spiker, the National Rifle Association. We oppose this bill. Unfortunately, it just puts more limitations on constitutionally protected freedoms. Individuals, should not be limited in the amount of firearms they choose to defend themselves or their family with. While we're encouraged by Senator Peterson's noting of line 270, unfortunately, we look forward to you opposing this bill. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jean Gannon. I'm the chairwoman of the Powhatan County Republican Committee. Just want to go on record that we oppose this bill.
Okay. Any other speakers in opposition? Okay.
Scott Jenkins, Sheriff of Culpeper. I oppose the bill. Simply put, there are more guns in this country than there are citizens. All you're going to do is continue to drive up the cost for the criminal to purchase those illegal guns. Evil will still be committed, and the law-abiding will be the ones affected. My son, seated by me today, is a 14-year-old who enjoys sport shooting, and I'm having him with me today to watch his future change so drastically with these proposed bills from what I enjoyed here in the Commonwealth growing up, becoming an NRA member at age 12 and enjoying the use of firearms as we've so widely done throughout the rural areas of our state all these years. I hope you give long thought to the reality of what these bills will actually do versus what they will not do. Compare what you're proposing to the most restricted gun areas in our country, whether it's Chicago or others, and think about what it really has an impact on. And try to educate yourselves on the real function of firearms, whether it's a mag capacity or others, that really will have no impact when evil is committed. It will still happen, whether by another tool or an illegal tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Harold Fall. I'm from Williamsburg. And I have to look at this from just a pure commercial point of view. We have a legitimate industry in this country, a very legitimate industry that supports thousands and thousands of jobs. And those jobs are supported by us, the citizens who purchase those products. We are legitimate gun owners. We don't go out and kill people. We don't go out and sell our guns. We don't go out. Those of us are responsible gun owners. We store them properly. We keep them in a safe environment. If someone is bad enough to let them lay out, well, you know what, then they should the one be penalized, not us. Legitimate, safe gun owners. And let's support the gun industry and keep many, many jobs here in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the negative side? Okay. Yeah. Is there a motion to report the bill? No. Oh, yeah, okay. We need to move to roll Senator Saslaw's. Yeah, oh, okay, I'm sorry. We need to report the substitute.
Substitute?
Just
Where?
as amended.
Mr. Chairman,
No,
I didn't see a
we've already
substitute.
rolled. We've already rolled. Yeah. Okay.
As amended.
Generally, you don't need a substitute.
Well, I think we just need to report the bill. It's already been rolled in. Okay. The motion is to report Senate Bill 69. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Moved and second. Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay. Speak up. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 69 be reported. All in favor of the motion, vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I thought the chair might actually call for discussion.
Oh.
Is that out of order?
No, go ahead. Yeah. You go ahead.
I thought maybe somebody was going to speak in favor of it before I
Okay.
shared some thoughts.
It's before the body, the motion before the body. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Oberstein.
I actually thought somebody might speak in favor of the bill, and not hearing anybody pipe up and say anything from the dais in support, I hope that means that there's inadequate support on this committee to pass this bill out of the committee to report it, but somehow I doubt that that is the case. I do want to just say a couple of things. I think that the last speaker made a point that is well made and needs to be reinforced. You know, this and the other bills that we're probably going to take up today, and they really are going to do little to affect violent crime in Virginia. It is the law-abiding citizens whose rights are going to be affected by this, and I know that there are people out there shaking their heads, but it is the law-abiding citizens whose rights will be most affected by this legislation, not the criminals. I would also point out that, you know, actions have consequences, just like elections have consequences, and I get both. I'm sick and tired of hearing people from New York and other states say that we have adopted policies in our state that have made it difficult for us to fight crime in our state, and as a consequence, you in Virginia need to step up and help us bail ourselves out of a very bad situation. I suspect that Philadelphia is going to be next, but in New York, first it was cigarettes. You know, they tax cigarettes at an unbelievable rate, and they blame Virginians and other states for selling cigarettes without tacking on a $4 or $5 a pack tax, and say that it's our fault that there's cigarette trafficking in their states. They've adopted such outrageous policies that have undermined the fundamental constitutional rights of people to own and bear arms, that people that they are looking at other states to blame for the problems that have arisen as a consequence of their ill-advised policy. You know, it's not lost on me that Mayor Michael Bloomberg, presidential candidate and gazillionaire, pumped enormous amounts of money into Virginia's elections over the past 4-6 years, and frankly into some of the organizations that were represented here today. And I know that Mayor Bloomberg, presidential candidate Bloomberg, was in Virginia last week, I suppose, on part of a victory tour in conjunction with this and other legislation. It would be my sincere hope that Virginians are not governed by the former mayor of New York City, that we will not accept his mandate that we pass this ill-advised legislation to solve New York's problems. It would be my hope that the members of this committee would vote no.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard some recitations today about safety and people wanting to reduce gun violence. Mr. Chairman, I know you're aware, but the members of the audience might not be. I was a prosecutor before I got elected to the legislature. One of the biggest things that we can do to reduce gun violence is make sure that people that use guns in a criminal offense go to jail, and there are mandatory penalties for them to do that. Mr. Chairman, this is focused on people who are gone to a facility, given their information, the state police has run a background check, they've not committed a felony. This is focused at law-abiding citizens. Mr. Chairman, I hope that when this committee has the opportunity, or the members of this legislature, that they will take the stand and say if you use a gun and commit a crime, that you will go to prison and there will be no exceptions.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sasslaw.
Unless there's been some changes recently, that currently is on the books if you use a gun in commission of a crime. We have mandatory sentencing.
It's also 5 years in the federal system using a gun in commission of a crime. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Serval.
Speaking to the bill.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This law was on the books in the Commonwealth of Virginia from 1989 until 2012. The world didn't come to an end. The Constitution wasn't thrown out the window. People could still buy their firearms. The reality is this law was repealed in 2012 after the NRA put a big pressure campaign on everybody and made it a big thing for the folks on the other side of the aisle. And so we can talk about these issues to death, but the world didn't come to an end, and we're just seeking to restore the law to what it was, common sense law we had in place for 2 decades in this state that worked fine.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Obenchain.
2012. I don't think I've heard anything about violent crime statistics since 2012, and that's because it has not been a problem. I also haven't heard anything about New York's crime statistics. Did we solve New York's violent crime problem? No, we did not solve New York's violent crime problem. This is a tribute to what Michael Bloomberg, make no mistake about it, that's all this is.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Mr. Chair, I'll just point out one thing that did happen here in Virginia since the law was repealed is that 22 Virginians were arrested in 2017 and charged with 620 counts in a 627-count indictment for trafficking guns purchased in Virginia. They were in Virginia and were caught bragging on a wiretape about how weak our laws are and that they can buy guns like candy. So we are not responding to Michael Bloomberg or what's happening in New York. We are responding to what's happening right here in Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, it sounds like the law worked pretty well.
We'll go through the chair. Senator Obenchain.
Mr. Chairman, it would sound like the law worked pretty well if those gun traffickers were actually arrested. So,
Mr. Chair, they were arrested under federal law, but they still were able to buy those guns and traffic them.
Okay, let's not have a running debate here. Those are the rules. Any further discussion? The motion should, according to the clerk, it should be it is a substitute. A motion that the substitute, because Senate Bill 22 has been rolled into Senate Bill 69. Yes, it's the version of 69 that's before you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations, Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Nomer.
Once again, from a procedural standpoint, I appreciate that you can roll one bill into another and characterize it semantically as a substitute. Traditionally, we've had a substitute bill that is before us to vote on, as opposed to a fiction of we're going to roll Bill 1 into Bill 2, call that a substitute and vote on it. And I apologize for the redundancy. I am concerned about the deviation from the way that we do business.
If you'd like to talk to the clerk.
No, sir. Talk to Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
May I respond?
Yeah, John Garrett.
And legislative council has done this. The purpose of the substitute is to comply with the motion that there are co-patrons. And that is the only change to the bill.
Okay. No further discussion on this, I hope. Okay. The next bill, Louise. Senator Lucas has a bill, Universal Background Check, Senate Bill 70. And is there a motion that Senator Sasslaw, Senate Bill 12 be rolled into Senate Bill 70?
I'll move it.
Is there a second? All in favor of the motion that Senate Bill 12 be rolled into Senate Bill 70, vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
There's no button for me to.
Ayes 11, no 0. I will add you.
Okay. All right, the motion carries. So Senate Bill 69 has been, Senate Bill 22 has been rolled into Senate Bill 69. Senator Lucas.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
I'm sorry. Senate Bill 12 is rolled into Senate Bill 70, Senator Lucas's bill. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill would establish a universal background check system in Virginia by requiring criminal history record checks for all firearm sales and transfers, including sales originating online, sales at gun shows, and all private sales. This bill accomplishes this goal by mandating that any person selling, renting, trading, or transferring a firearm must first obtain the results of a background check before completing the transaction. Additionally, it enables the Virginia State Police to create a process by which private sellers may obtain transaction approval or denial from a federally licensed firearms dealer. The bill contains several exemptions, Mr. Chairman, to this process that do not relate to commercial sales of firearms, including gifts for immediate family members, any transfer that occurs by operation of law, transfer to or by the executor of a will, estate, or trust as required by the will, trust of the estate, temporary transfer necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm, temporary transfers that occur in the presence of the owner of a firearm, a sale authorized by a gun buyback or give-back program, transfer of antique firearms, or a transfer that occurs during a shooting range, training course, or shooting competition. Mr. Chairman, please keep those specific exemptions in mind. A person who sells or transfers a firearm without first obtaining a background check is guilty of a Class 6 felony. Additionally, any person who willfully or intentionally purchases or receives a firearm from any person without undergoing a background check is guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. Currently, only sellers with a federal firearms license are required to obtain the results of a criminal background check prior to selling or transferring firearms. Private sellers, including those at gun shows, are not required to perform criminal background checks. This bill is significant because the Virginia State Police conducted 446,333 firearm transfers through federally licensed firearm dealers in 2018. And of those transactions, 3,457 transactions were denied, and 1,779 denials met the criteria for arrest. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you got conversation going on behind you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Senator Lucas.
That means
You have the
that nearly
floor.
3,500 individuals who are prohibited from purchasing or processing firearms exempted to purchase firearms from federally licensed firearm dealers, and nearly 2,000 did so knowingly. If prohibited persons are attempting to purchase firearms from licensed dealers, it is very likely that even more prohibited persons are purchasing firearms illegally from private sellers. This would prevent prohibited persons from obtaining firearms. Requiring background checks for all purchases will keep firearms out of the hands of individuals who should not have them. This is not a partisan issue, but rather a public safety issue, and will help to ensure that Virginia is part of the solution around preventing gun violence rather than part of the problem. Preliminary numbers from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner indicate that Virginia's had over 1,030 deaths from firearms in 2018. The Office of the Medical Examiner reported that Virginia had 1,028 deaths from firearms in 2017. The Office of the Chief Examiner reported that Virginia had 1,058 deaths from firearms in 2016, and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner reports that Virginia had 940 deaths from firearms in 2015. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Governor Northam's budget includes a general fund appropriation and 10 positions at the state police to implement this law in conjunction with several other detailed bills. The governor's budget includes $2,408,835 in fiscal 2021 and $1,228,233 in fiscal 2022. This bill requires a $50,000 Woodrum amendment, and this funding is included in the governor's budget, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions?
Mr.
of the
Chair.
patron? Senator Peterson.
Mr. Chair, I've distributed a substitute, and if possible, I'd like to speak to that, and I'd like to address the lady's very good bill and her comments.
Okay, go ahead. Senator Peterson.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I've distributed a substitute, and I listened to the lady's remarks. She's been a leader on this issue, and she's also molded her bill to fit a number of concerns that have been raised, and I appreciate that. And this bill is important, and it's going to pass. But I have concern with the word transfer, and let me explain why. We all know what the problem is. It's people that trying to avoid criminal background checks, and so they go and buy weapons on the black market. We understand that. That's the problem, and we're going to solve it. The word transfer is much more open-ended, and it can deal with giving a weapon between friends, family members, you name it. And I respect the fact the gentlelady drew a number of exemptions into the bill, but there are situations where, for example, a brother-in-law or a friend or a neighbor, you may be on a hunting trip with them, you may give them your firearm, and they may walk off and no longer be within your personal custody. Is that a Class 6 felony? It may be, for example, that you're with a guide and someone goes to retrieve a dog and it's in, you're still in the duck blind. Is that a Class 6 felony? We need to be very careful. And so the substitute that I've drafted, and I've listened to my colleagues, is very clear on line 17. It says, no person shall sell a firearm for money, goods, services, or anything else of value unless he has obtained verification from a licensed dealer in firearms. So we go right to the point, which is black market sales. I think we need to be precise on this. I asked the committee to support this substitute, which I think is more precise. I also note that it is a Class 6 felony at this point. I believe it ought to be a Class 1 misdemeanor. I think one of the things I've learned from 20 years up here is you cannot solve social problems by making things felonies. And I do believe there are going to be people that may get caught up in this law, which is a good law. But I do think it's important that we make it a Class 1 misdemeanor at this point. Again, if there's a repeat offense, we can make that a felony if we have repeat actors. But I do believe it's important we be precise with this law and not sweep up other people. And I ask you to support the substitute, and I move the substitute.
Substitute has been moved. Is there a second? And seconded by Senator Deeds. Any further discussion? Senator Norman.
Thank you. Just so I understand that the bill that Senator Lucas has offered has a transfer exemption in it. The bill that you are offering does not.
Okay. I think the term is, the word is sale, not transfer.
I think the opposite is true, Mr. Chair. I think that her bill applies to transfer or sale. His substitute applies just to sale.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? It's been moved and seconded. It's been moved by Senator Peterson, seconded by Senator Deeds, that the substitute be adopted. Voice vote. All in favor of the substitute being adopted, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
It seems to me ayes have it. Okay. All right. Now we have, I assume a bunch of people would like to speak in favor of the bill, the substitute. Secretary Moran.
Senator, members of the committee, actually on the substitute, we would oppose the substitute language because transfers are already provided for exemptions in Senate Bill 70, the original bill, on lines, beginning on line 395, bona fide gift to a member of transferor's immediate family, and then there's a litany of transfers.
I addressed that in my comments, Mr. Secretary.
No, okay, let's
addressed that.
Secretary, the bill before us is a substitute bill.
Well, the challenge I have with just sales, I would question how law enforcement's going to be able to determine whether or not the gun was provided via gift or transfer. Are they going to require a receipt for a financial, for a sale, commercial transaction? So the substitute, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Governor Northam administration strongly supports background checks, a universal background check law. I think
Mr. Chair.
was
Mr. Chair.
initially in the Senator Lucas's bill.
All right, Senator Peterson.
The Secretary, you'll agree with me that sale is a defined term under the Virginia Code.
It is.
You'll agree with me transfer is not a defined term under the Virginia Code.
Well, I would.
Okay. That's any other, those who are speaking in favor of the substitute, and if you speak against the substitute, we can do that later. Everybody, each side has 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. Who else is in favor of the substitute?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Point of order.
Senator
Are we now calling for debate on the substitute that's already been adopted?
The substitute has been adopted as a substitute, and the motion is, will be before us to pass it. But right now, we're opening up to the public for discussion. 5 minutes on each side. All in favor of the substitute, speak in favor of it. Okay. Anybody against the substitute? Speak in favor. Come up and speak against it. 5 minutes.
Pam Pouchot, Peninsula Indivisible. I oppose the substitute. Be honest, I'm not even in favor of the transfers of any form not coming under universal background checks. But we need to stop people who have no business having firearms, whether they're your relative, your cousin, whatever. Nobody should be exempt from universal background check. Thank you. And I support Louise Lucas's bill fully.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. We oppose the substitute. We would prefer the much stronger and better original bill.
No discussing it, but it's supposed the whole thing.
Well, it's going to fail.
Good morning. My name is Lori House. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We support Senate Bill 70 in its original version. Speaking to the word transfer is used on line 172 when it refers to a dealer. I'm not sure that if leaving the word transfer in that line makes sense. If it doesn't make sense there, does it make sense in Senator Lucas's version? How
Well,
would you define a transfer? What is that?
I would
Someone's
say-
going to sell a give a firearm, and they're going to have cash under the table?
Mr.
How is the law enforcement going to investigate that? How is that going to be determined? It's going to tie law enforcement's hands if you don't keep transfers and that language in the bill. If you want to come up with a legally accepted term in the code, can we please get this correct? I understand what you're trying to do, and the exemptions in Senator Lucas's bill attempt that and cover that. And if we can't get it straight right now this morning, can we please work on this and make sure we get it straight? Because the word transfer is used throughout the code in many places.
All right, next speaker against the bill.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Sweeney. I'm a wife, mother, and grandmother of children in public schools, and I completely oppose this substitution.
Okay. Speaking against the bill, the substitute.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Sandler. I'm a part of the volunteer state team for the Virginia chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I'm a mom of 3, a business owner, and a 38-year resident of Virginia. Our thousands of Virginia members came from 25 chapters across the state in rural, urban, and suburban areas. This past November, Moms Demand Action and their fellow Virginians turned out in astonishing record numbers in an off-year election, citing stronger gun laws as their #1 priority. We vigorously support, the bill as introduced by Senator Lucas. Strong background checks are associated with reduced rates of firearm homicide, suicide, and trafficking, and they are the backbone of any comprehensive gun violence prevention policy. One of our own members, Brenda Moss, lost her son to gun violence because Virginia does not require a background check for all gun sales. Please vote for Senator Lucas's bill as it has been proposed and stand with the 94% of Virginians who consistently support background checks on all gun sales. Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers against the bill? Yeah, go ahead.
The Attorney General supports the bill in its original form, opposes the substitute. We would note that the term transfer is already used in the Virginia Code in reference to background checks, and the Attorney General stands ready to assist if the committee believes that that language is ambiguous or needs to be clarified. But we support the original bill and oppose the substitute.
Okay. Any other speakers against the substitute?
Good morning, sir. DJ Spiker, National Rifle Association. A bit surreal, but at the same time, we oppose, obviously, any form of background check. It's an infringement on law-abiding citizens. While we're encouraged by the Senator's amendments and improves the bill overall, we still oppose and look forward to this. Just remember, as a reminder, a year and a half ago, 750,000 felonies missing from the criminal database that we are running through. These background checks, the data is only as good as what you get put in, so what you get out. There's still a number of these issues remaining. So overall, we do oppose this bill. Thank you so much.
Any other speakers against the substitute? Come forward.
My name is Tom Gresh. I live in Aylett, Virginia. I'm just fed up with all these rules. It's infringing on my rights as freedom. The bottom line of the Democrats is the total confiscation, and y'all are going right along with it. I'm sick and tired of it. That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. That ends the public debate. We have before us a substitute, Senator Peterson's substitute.
Your Honor, I move to report the bill.
Is there a second?
And can I speak to it?
Yeah, yes.
And let me just say briefly, this is the beginning of a process, and we are going to get this bill out of here today. I obviously have my opinion. A lot of people have their opinion. The bottom line is this bill is focused on black market sales. It's the beginning of a process, so I would move that we report the substitute and get this to the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I were inclined to support the bill, which I am not at this point, but a concern that I have and a dramatic difference between these bills while we're talking about the semantics of transfer as opposed to sale is that under the introduced bill, it's a Class 6 felony. Under Senator Peterson's bill, it is a Class 1 misdemeanor, and that is a huge chasm to cross. And I have no doubt that this bill is coming out in some form, but I really would hope that there would be some reflection about the punishment associated with this on a first-time offense and perhaps consider escalating it if there's a second or subsequent offense.
Any further discussion? Senator Owenshane? No? All right, any
Just
further?
a
Go
question
ahead. Mhm.
For Senator Peterson, I suppose. I take it that this would still cover a sale if it was between immediate family members, or would it exempt that? If, say, my 25, 26-year-old son was to buy one of my shotguns, would that be subject to the background check, and would I be committing a misdemeanor by taking $100 from my 25-year-old son?
I think the short answer is, it says no person shall sell a firearm for money, goods, services, or anything else. So if it's a commercial sale, and again, sale is a defined term in the Virginia Code, then it falls under this statute. And the reason why I did this was to make this simple, so we didn't have 30 different exceptions. The exceptions that we have right now are, well, the ones that are listed in lines 385 through 395. The short answer is a commercial sale falls under this subsection. So the answer is yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Obenshine.
So when I lend my children money or get them to reimburse me for something I've purchased for them, I'm not sure that I consider that to be a commercial sale from me to them, but this would be a commercial sale?
If it meets the definition of a sale under the Virginia Code.
Between immediate family members.
Okay, any further discussion? Yeah, Senator Serval.
Mr. Chairman, speaking to the bill.
Yeah,
Thank
speak.
you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I think the answer to the senator's questions is on, I think subsection I, right at the end of the bill, where it talks about purchases and private sales. But it seems to me that it's probably covered. But having said that, from my perspective, this bill is important. If we all just look at the impact statement that was filed along with this bill, in the last fiscal year, 224 people were convicted of filing a false statement on firearm consent forms. That's through the legal background check system. There was another 2 people that solicited a dealer to transfer a firearm to another illegally. There was 3 people that purchased but provided firearms to somebody who was illegal to own one. This loophole that we have for private sales is a massive loophole where a lot of, or if not most, the vast bulk of the illegal transactions, which are a small fraction of which are getting caught up in the universal background check system, are occurring. And for public safety, it's absolutely critical we pass this bill. As Senator Peterson said, legislating is a process. This is the first vote of many votes we're going to be taking on this legislation. We're going to see a House bill come over, and I support getting this bill out of committee and onto the floor and over to the House.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, this is a question for Senator Peterson. Senator Peterson, I'm looking at lines, I guess, 254 and 255 on page 10 of the substitute. And am I reading this correct, that you have to have a photo identification form issued by a government agency in order to participate in this action, but you would not be required to have one to vote under things coming forward?
Mr. Chair, if I might respond?
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
First of all, that's a good question. I'm going to phone a friend on this because that actually was part of really what I understand is a legislative cleanup, and I'm going to ask if our council can explain that section on what IDs are necessary.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator McDougal.
It was really a rhetorical question in there because it's clearly written that you're required to have a photo identification issued by a governmental agency.
Okay, Senator Peterson?
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, I will simply say that I discussed this with council over the weekend. I understand this is to bring us into compliance with federal law, but perhaps they can explain that better.
Yeah, Charles?
Mr. Chairman, lines 253 to lines 262 deal with dual residence under ATF provisions. If you maintain a residence in 2 separate states, you can buy firearms in each other state. This kind of brings Virginia more in line with that. There was some, I'll say, some issues dealing with dual residence where if a person had a house in Virginia, but let's say lived in Florida, and all their government IDs were for Florida, they could establish residence as it lists in 257 to 260 with either utility bills, voter registration cards, something that would show they actually have a residence in Virginia. So that's the purpose of this new language.
Okay, any further discussion? Yeah, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Senator Lucas, thank you for the work that you've done on this. Ever since I was in the House in 2008, you have been passionate about this and you've been working on this bill. Kudos to you for that. However, right now, we're not discussing whether the original bill or the substitute. That's not the vote. The vote right now is whether Senator Peterson's substitute should pass. I would remind everybody that there are going to be several opportunities to make amendments to this bill on the floor of the Virginia State Senate in the Conference of Conferees. And I expect that we will get a different bill over from the House. So an old adage that I remember from the House is don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Right now, we have Senator Peterson's bill, and I would
My amendment, her bill.
Her bill, your substitute. And I'd ask that we pass it. So a motion, Mr. Chair, is to report.
Motion, okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just in my closing remarks, even though I do not like the amendment, as you had the discussion this morning, I do understand that this is a process. And like I haven't given up all these years, I'm not going to give up during this session. And I'm hoping that my bill will return to me in the form that it is currently. And so, Mr. Chairman, I dare not vote against my own bill because I don't like the amendment. So, Mr. Chairman, you can call for the vote.
Okay.
I mean, I don't need to tell you what to do,
All
but
right.
anyway.
All right. The motion is to report the substitute of Senator Peterson as Senate Bill 70. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The clerk will call the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
The motion carries.
That's the best in a decade and a
Thank
half.
you. Thank you, Senator Lucas. Thank you very much. Moving on to red flag laws, Senator Barker is here, Senate Bill 240. I saw him hiding over there in the corner. Here he is. Red flag laws. Senator Barker, explain your bill. Senator Bill 240.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This bill is Senate Bill 240. Basically, it's the extreme risk protection order bill, but also generically often referred to as red flag. This is a bill that I've carried for a number of years. We've had some discussion on this. Last year, we had a substantial amount of discussion in this particular committee and a tie vote on the bill, so it did not move forward on that tie vote. It's something I think that a lot of people are intrigued by and are open to moving forward with something that will allow the temporary removal of a firearm from someone who is an imminent risk to use the firearm to kill or harm themselves or someone else. What this does is it creates a legal mechanism, and it is a legal mechanism that has withstood court challenges. When I first started working on this bill, there were only a handful of states, 3 or 4 states that had this. There are now 17 states in the District of Columbia that have this legislation. In 3 states, it's been challenged on Second Amendment and other related issues. And in all 3 cases, those state courts have ruled that the law is proper. So that the law has been successfully defended in court. Just to go over a couple of the details that are in here, and obviously the 18 states in the district that have these laws now, they're not all exactly the same. Our situation is that the first effort would be to attempt to obtain an emergency risk protection order. In Virginia, this would have that as something that would be sought only by law enforcement or Commonwealth attorneys' offices in courts. So it would not open it up. If you didn't like your neighbor, you wouldn't be able to go to court and be able to, in effect, ask a judge to remove the gun from them. What it would do is it would allow you to go to the law enforcement community. They would then have to evaluate it and be able to justify it before a law enforcement officer. Before a judicial officer. The emergency risk protection order could be issued by a judicial officer, which includes a judge at the state level, circuit, general district, or juvenile and domestic relations court, or a magistrate. This is to move things along quickly. And the emergency protection order would be in place for 14 days. There would then be a hearing to find whether there's probable cause that the individual poses a substantial risk. That would be done by a circuit court, and finally, emergency risk protection order would be issued only upon finding of clear and convincing evidence. The bill also does have a provision in there so that if you don't like your neighbor and you're trying to be able to impose something on him or her, if you made representation to law enforcement that was materially false statements, that would be something where there would be a judicial penalty for that. Those are sort of the major issues that are in there, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I do have other people here that can help with answering those questions.
Okay, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask a couple of questions of the patron. First of all, because I practice a fair amount of law in this arena, would you have any objection where it provides that a magistrate has the ability to issue this emergency order if they would have to do so in consultation with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office?
I don't think that would present a significant issue here, so that I think would be a reasonable type of.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, my second question is, who is going to make the factual determination based upon objective facts? What constitutes a substantial risk?
In the end here, it would be done by a circuit court judge for the
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Norman.
Day 14 through day 180.
Yeah, Senator Norman.
I apologize, perhaps I wasn't as articulate as I should be. When an application is initially made, say before a magistrate or a general district court judge, not where the evidentiary hearing is in the circuit court, but where the emergency order is issued, what type of guidance or guidelines are set out to determine what constitutes substantial risk, realizing that we have 131 jurisdictions across Virginia, and that would be subject to a colloquial interpretation?
Mr. Chair and Senator Norman, certainly this is something that may be interpreted a little bit differently from place to place. There's certainly mechanisms to be able to put in place definitions of what substantial risk there. I do have someone who could talk about what has been done in other states that would, how they've dealt with this type of issue as well, if you would like. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Any
Mr.
questions?
Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Mr. Chairman, I have a series of line amendments I'd like to offer to the bill. I've discussed them with the patron. I think they've been vetted by some folks. I passed them around the other side. I think they're probably friendly amendments, and the council has them.
Okay. You want to explain them, or do you want council to explain
I'm happy to explain them.
Okay, Senator Serval, explain your line amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just so the committee has an understanding, the gist of this is that I've litigated probably, 40 or 50 family violence type protective orders. And there are certain procedural due process components in those proceedings which I did not see in this proceeding, and I'll walk you through them. First of all, Amendment number 1, what that does is it makes it clear that when the emergency order is issued, it will have the hearing date within 14 days stated in the order, so when the person receives the order, they will know when that hearing date is. I was concerned in the absence of that, it wasn't clear to me how the hearing date got set. The second amendment would require that when somebody is served with the emergency order, that at the same time they're served with the emergency order, they're also handed a copy of the initial petition and the supporting affidavit. That way, they know what they're being accused of and what the basis for the allegation is. My concern was that these things happen so fast that what typically happens is somebody gets hit with one of these orders, they call a lawyer, maybe it takes them a couple days to call the lawyer, it takes the lawyer a couple days to get into the court file. This sort of expedites all that so that the person is fully advised of what's going on and what they've been accused of so they can better prepare their defense in advance without delay. Amendment number 3, that clarifies, I was a little concerned that the way the statute is drafted, it wasn't clear to me that this proceeding, whether it has to be in a separate legal proceeding or whether it can occur within an existing criminal case or an existing civil case. And I wanted to make sure that these proceedings are separate, independent legal proceedings from anything else. And I also wanted to make clear that the rules of discovery apply, because it wasn't clear from this whether or not somebody who's been accused of being a risk under this order, whether they could issue subpoenas or obtain discovery to try and further either evaluate the claims against them or gather evidence to defend themselves. And when we're dealing with somebody's constitutional right, just like when you exclude somebody from a home and a family protective order, I think it's important that people be able to obtain evidence and defend themselves. Amendment number 4, what that has to do with is, again, these proceedings happen very rapidly. Under this law we have in front of us, the hearing has to occur within 14 days. As an attorney who has to, I've both prosecuted family protective orders and defended them, 14 days is a very short amount of time to be able to prepare for a hearing. And especially in the absence of a de novo appeal to circuit court in this bill, I think it's critical that people be able to fully prepare their defense, and that if they're not ready to go, they need to continue to get a.
You turn your mic on.
They should be able to get a continuance. My light's on. I don't know what's wrong with my mic.
Change seats then.
That doesn't work either.
Mine works.
All right.
Go ahead, yell, Senator Shervill.
I will. And by the way, it provides that only the person accused in the order, the recipient of the order, they're the only one that can seek the continuance, not the person petitioning for it. And then the last change just makes it clear that the Supreme Court of Virginia
is going to issue standardized forms in order to affect the purpose on these purposes. So these things aren't just made up. There's standard forms that are used in every one of these cases. Those are my line amendments. And Mr. Chairman, I have an additional line amendment that was handed to me by counsel that I can propose. I'd like to propose separately because I don't have it typed out.
Well, let's go do these written line amendments of Senator Shervill. The motion's been made and seconded to adopt the line amendments. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? We can do this by voice vote, I think.
Mr. Chairman, staff has a couple of technical corrections to the order of the wording, so as long as the motion includes that, we're okay.
Go ahead. What's your technical amendments? The order of the wording?
That's right. As to amendment number 2, the wording should be a copy of the order, the petition, the search warrant, and the supporting affidavit. And amendment number 3, delete the words "opened as."
Okay. Is there a second that we adopt those line amendments to Senator Shervill's line amendments? Motion's made and seconded. Senator.
Also, as to amendment 1, the insertion should be after the word "shall."
Okay. Is there a motion we adopt that line amendment? Been moved and seconded that we do that. Okay, does everybody understand these line amendments? Some were done orally, some were in writing. All in favor of the motion to adopt these several line amendments, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Shervill.
I have an additional amendment I'd like to propose, and that's on line 433 of the introduced bill.
Go ahead.
After the word "person" on line 433, I would like to insert the words "for such firearm." And just to tell the committee what that is about, is this section of the bill has to do with how a search warrant is executed for these weapons. And right now, the law directs that the officer who's effecting the intent of the order, gathering the firearms, may enter into the person's place and search their home. It also says they may search such person. I want to make clear that they have to search the person for the firearm. And this isn't a fishing expedition to go looking for other types of objects in people's pockets that people often find when they start patting people down. So they should be law enforcement should be looking for hard gun-shaped objects and not soft things or other types of objects that law enforcement often looks for in cases. And that's This just tightens up the search for the purpose of the bill. That's my second amendment.
Okay, is there a motion to that?
Mr. Chairman.
Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's get it on the floor first. It's been seconded. Senator Deeds seconds that line amendment. Yeah, Senator McDougal?
Senator Servo, when somebody goes to do a search, and even if you're searching for a specified item, what prohibits the law enforcement from going and doing an extensive pat-down or review of their clothing? And then if they find something while that search is occurring, then they have some additional cause that they could go forward.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the way I would address the gentleman's concern is that I'm sure as a criminal defense lawyer, he's aware that in some circumstances, for example, when somebody's stopped for a traffic offense or otherwise, sometimes an officer feels like they need to do a pat-down for officer safety. In those scenarios, the only things they're supposed to be looking for in people's pockets are things that might constitute weapons. So if they find a soft object that might be, say, for example, in a plastic bag, or something that might be used to burn the substance in that bag, if it's an item like that, they're not supposed to go into your pockets to take them because they're doing a search for officer safety. And from my point of perspective, it's the same thing. They need to be looking for firearms, which is the purpose of this statute.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, but Senator Servo, you would concede that even under your language, an officer would be able to pat an individual down and go through their outer clothing and pat all parts of their body to determine if there was something that could be a firearm.
Senator Serval.
Yes, under both the existing bill and with my amendment, they would be able to do that. I would think under my amendment, though, it makes it tighter.
Okay, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask Senator Serval, the way this bill is drafted, while we're talking about pat-downs, it does not in any way restrict law enforcement from what we would call in plain view, does it?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I would respond in by saying, no, it does not.
Okay, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just address the Senator's inquiry about how far you can extend the search. And I think it might help the discussion. If the search warrant was for a television set in somebody's home, the police can come into the house and they can't search a drawer or some area where there's no possible way that that television set could be hidden. With regard to Senator Serval's line amendment to add the words "for such firearm," the police officers would be limited to the following. Certainly, anything in plain view, Senator Norman, the police could seize. Second, if they patted him down and patted the person down only, and they felt, and there was nothing in this pocket that could be a firearm, that ends the search. And finally, a firearm is relatively small, but there could be no search in any space, in any portion of that house that was smaller than a firearm could be hidden. I hope that helps.
Okay, any further discussion? Senator Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, but to Senator Serval and Senator Morrissey's point, anything in plain view along the way, these people could be charged for. And beyond that, they otherwise could be charged for something in plain view in the sanctity of their home for which they had no charge that was filed through due process of law to get a search warrant to come into their homes. So even with your amendment, you're flipping due process and the Constitution on its head.
Mr. Chairman,
isn't that right?
Senator Morrissey.
I would tell the senator that it's not flipping the law. That's been the law for the last 200 years. If a police officer goes into the home and is limited, he has a search warrant that directs with specificity to look for a particular item, and he sees an unlawful object in his or her plain view, yes, the person could be arrested, that assuming they're in possession of it, whether it's constructive or otherwise. But that's not flipping the law. That's the way the law exists right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't know that we were going to go in this direction, but I think there's a really important difference. We're talking about now a person's residence. So right now, for there to be a search warrant, there has to be a warrant for an arrest of somebody that there's probable cause to believe is in that residence, or there has to be probable cause of criminal activity or contraband or evidence of criminal activity. So we are changing the law substantially. We're not saying that there's criminal activity or a person is under arrest. And as the senator's amendments put in it, this is now a civil proceeding. So we're going to search your house. Well, I'm not going to vote for it, but some people are going to vote to search your house for a civil proceeding, not for a criminal proceeding. And that is dramatically changing the way the Constitution has been interpreted.
Okay, if there's no more discussion of the committee, would welcome those.
Mr. Chairman,
to-
point of
that
order.
are
Mr. Chairman,
in
point
favor
of-
and those that are against.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, point of
Yes,
order.
Senator Sherrill.
I don't think we voted on my second line amendment
Okay.
yet. We need a voice vote on that.
You're right. Your line amendment is before us. Been a motion to adopt the line amendment, seconded. All in favor of the line amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the line amendment's adopted. Okay, would like to line up at 5 minutes each side. Those in favor of the bill as amended? Secretary Moran?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for your time. Senator Barker did a great job in walking through a lot of italicized language, but I think the 3 points we'd like to make why the governor is strongly supportive of this legislation is, first, it does address the situation that this is limited to law enforcement of Commonwealth's attorney, those who have experience with the factual determination whether or not there is substantial harm involved to himself or others. And so that is a major point. This isn't disgruntled neighbors or disgruntled former employee situation. We introduce professionals into this determination. Second, the due process is a temporary deprivation up to 14 days before a circuit court judge, to make the determination. And third, we have the training aspect of this. We have spoken to a number of states. It's up to 17 states now in the District of Columbia that has a variation of this law. We've spoken to a number of them. One of our paramount concerns is safety of our law enforcement to execute these search warrants.
And the courts have upheld these, is that right?
The courts have all upheld these. That is correct, Mr. Chairman. And also, the governor has put money in the budget for a training position at the Department of Criminal Justice Services, so we can adopt those best practices that have been used throughout those 17 states to ensure the effective and safe implementation of this law. So on behalf of Governor Northam administration, we certainly ask for support of this legislation and appreciate Senator Barker's patronage.
Okay, next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Josh Horowitz with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. I want to make a couple of points. This law was developed with a lot of thought, both to due process, Second Amendment, and public safety. It creates clear legal authority for law enforcement to remove a firearm when someone's at a risk of dangerousness. It's been upheld in the 3 states that have courts who have considered it, in Connecticut, Indiana, and Florida. It addresses not only homicide and risk to others, but risk to self. And in Virginia, we've had close to 700 suicides every year, firearm suicides. This allows law enforcement to remove a threat for harm to self, which is we've seen that been used a lot in a number of different states. Also, it's important that the ex parte part of this is very important because sometimes 14 days is all you need to avert the crisis. Sometimes people don't go get the final order because that's not necessary. 14 days can do the trick sometimes. This is for law enforcement only after an independent investigation. There's a lot of due process that's been built in here. I've had the pleasure of talking to law enforcement across the country on this. I've talked to law enforcement in most of the states that have done this. In one state, after they examined their first year of orders, they found 21 incidents where mass shootings were stopped. I've talked to Maryland. In Maryland, they believe 5 or 6 mass shootings have been stopped because of this. But it's not just mass shootings. I was talking to the prosecuting Commonwealth attorney in Seattle, Washington, King County, where they do these orders. A woman came in with her boyfriend who had tried to commit suicide in the past. She was worried that he was becoming suicidal again and asked the Commonwealth Attorney to work together to file an order. This couple walked in hand, and the respondent said, "Thank you for taking the time to save my life." That's what this order does. It helps people save lives, and we urge you to vote for it.
Michelle Sandler with Moms Demand Action. We strongly support SB 240. Extreme risk order laws, also known as red flag laws, are saving lives in states that have them. They have broad bipartisan support on both the state and national level. These laws have prevented mass shootings and are also instrumental in reducing firearm suicides. Every year, nearly 1,000 Virginians are killed by a firearm, and nearly 70% of those deaths are suicide. On average, one Virginia resident dies by gun suicide every 14 hours. Courts have repeatedly found that extreme risk order laws are constitutional. For example, the law passed by Florida's Republican governor was upheld in court because it protects due process rights of all involved while ensuring safety by limiting access to firearms by a person in crisis. Please vote yes on SB 240.
Okay, thank you. There are a number of people still to speak, but we've run out of time. Would you just state your name and say whether you're for or against, you're for the bill?
Yeah, Thomas Powell, DOD, former employee and Air Force veteran. I'm not in favor of the red flag law. However, if you're going to give it to us, and I suspect you will, whether we like it or not, given the majority, I feel that Senator Slaslaw's comment about getting the Commonwealth Attorney involved could be a dangerous situation. I feel that it should be done on a local basis, and I feel that getting the Commonwealth Attorney involved would then nullify the Second Amendment sanctuary effectiveness.
Okay, thank you. Again, we've gone over time. If you just state your name, I assume
Yes,
you're
sir.
in favor of the bill.
Yes, sir. Lori Haas with Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We support the bill. Thank
Okay.
you.
Next.
Molly Voigt with Giffords. We support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Kelsey Rogers, Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, in support. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Pam Fouchot, Peninsula Indivisible, in favor of the bill. One quickie, 92% of all suicides by gun are successful.
Okay.
Only 21% are successful if they don't use a gun.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Julia Sabanowitz with the Virginia Catholic Conference, and we continue to support this bill.
Okay, thank you. The Attorney General?
Support the bill.
Thank you. Okay, now, if those who oppose the bill, if you got 5 minutes also. Okay.
Philip Van Cleve, Virginia Citizens Defense League. Well, first of all, this bill doesn't get any treatment for the supposedly suicidal or dangerous person. He's free to kill himself. Hangings are 25% of suicides. Poison himself, lots of ways to kill yourself. Or if you were a danger to your family, you could still kill your family. They've arrested your guns. Even the guns aren't getting a treatment. This kind of falls under I hate gun owners. This whole group of bills really is aimed at I hate gun owners, and particularly if you're poor, because this bill will not allow for an attorney if you can't afford one. So you got to go in front of a judge and explain to him how you're not dangerous. Now, how you prove you're not dangerous? How do you prove a negative? But you're going to have to do it, and the judge doesn't have to accept it. He can keep your guns over and over and over again. You literally could be disarmed for life, and you've done nothing wrong. One person was killed by the police in Maryland. Over a third of their cases are basically vengeance. Somebody wanting to get even with a family member. So what do? They do a red flag. That's what happened to the person who was killed. He wasn't really dangerous, and the niece had to admit that she falsely did that. It violates the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, 10th, and 14th Amendments. I mean, maybe we could throw in the third and whatever if you could figure out how to violate one about having people quartered in your house. Constitution is clear about the Second Amendment, and this is purely a violation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Richard Pyle, citizen, Dinwiddie County. I've worked as a paramedic in the Commonwealth for the last 18 years. I am against this bill on several different points. First, for 244 years, we have had a tradition of due process in this nation. As Mr. Van Cleve said, this is an affront to the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. Specifically, You have a right to be adjudicated by your peers prior to having life, liberty, or property removed from you. We take this person, someone reports them, law enforcement goes to their home after the magistrate says it's okay, they remove their property and then say, by the way, you can defend yourself later. And that person's released on their own recognizance to the public. We have ECO, emergency custody orders, temporary detainment orders, which are executed in the Commonwealth every single day for people who are a threat to themselves or others. They are already things that we can do to get them off the streets. We do not need a bill to take their guns. Taking their guns without getting them off the street does absolutely nothing. If you think they're a threat, then they can be taken off the street. And if I could quote Benjamin Franklin for just a moment, who was paraphrasing Voltaire, better to let 100 guilty men go free than an innocent man pay for a crime he did not commit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and for the literary quotes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Adams, Virginia Shooting Sports Association. And since time is short, I'll just say that we oppose this bill. We would prefer to see a clear and convincing evidence as a standard versus due process versus just probable cause. There are a number of other things we believe need to be in the bill, but we are opposed to this bill.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. DJ Spiker, National Rifle Association. We strongly oppose this bill. There's a number of concerns others have touched on. Due process violations of the Fourth Amendment. While appreciating the changes that have been made, it still, unfortunately, doesn't go far enough. The standard of evidence, one thing to point out, after Florida's implementation of this policy, after a FOIA request, we found there was a 101% success rate in an adjudication taking away a firearm. It is a rubber stamp in other states. It is not a due process hearing. It is simply a rubber stamp to do so. We strongly oppose this bill. Look forward to working with it down the line.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Andrew Whiting, Franklin County, Virginia. I definitely oppose this bill because if you look at the grand scheme of it, it is an assault on anyone that owns a firearm. I mean, when it comes down to somebody going and saying, hey, this individual is a risk to himself or others, if you find that he or she is not, then what's to hold the other individual who made that assessment or who made that accusation? What's that what is there to hold them accountable? Nothing. They could do it again and again and again and again and again. There should be some punishment behind that, I would say, if we're forced to take this on. If we're forced to have this shoved down our throat.
All right, thank you. We have 17 seconds. I'll give the opponents 1 minute and
James
20
DeLong,
some
Powhatan,
seconds.
Virginia.
Yeah.
So I strongly oppose this bill, and
Okay.
the reason for it is even everyone on the right side of this room has already been labeled extremists and fanatics by the opposing group. So are they in fear? I mean, even this morning, as we waited to get into this building, there were different conversations being had between the opposing groups. The women that were with me were already in front of me were already in fear by the group on the right just because their views were being challenged. Now, would that constitute this red flag law being instituted? I mean, let me tell you something. In Powhatan, so I've got a friend of mine 2 years ago. He had a problem with mental illness. So he was a convicted felon, so he couldn't own a firearm, and he didn't own a firearm. He followed the law, but he was sick. So what did he do? He went to the top of his barn and he hung himself. Now, no one could see that he was that sick that he would do something like that. Otherwise, I'm sure Powhatan Sheriff's Office would have got involved because, I mean, they're jam up folks. So this bill's not going to do anything to save lives. There's no mental component to this bill at all. So all it is, it's just garbage.
Okay, thank you. Next, you got another
I oppose
half,
this bill. My
30
name is Tom
seconds.
Gresham Aylett.
Okay.
I oppose this bill 100%. Detroit, Chicago, New York City have the highest crime rates and murder rates of anywhere in the nation. They're all run by Democrats.
Okay, all right.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Kind of, thank you.
Matthew Fowler, Bedford, Virginia. This bill is unconstitutional and I oppose it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, go ahead. The time has run out. Just say your name and your opposition.
Raymond Deakins, 13th generation American. I oppose this for its draconian abuse of my constitutional rights.
Okay, just state your name and what your position is. Let you finish out. Good, but
My name is Dan Keeney. I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia. I oppose this bill. It's straight up gun confiscation. It is unconstitutional, and we will not stand for it.
Okay, the time has run out, so just state your name real quickly.
Arthur Stryker, citizen, Powhatan County.
Okay,
This
next.
is an unconstitutional law.
Okay. Go ahead.
Candy Eubank, Doswell, Virginia. We should be educating, not legislating.
Okay, next.
Jean Gannon, Chairwoman Powhatan Republican
Okay.
Committee and lifetime member of the NRA. I
Okay.
oppose this bill.
Again, state your name real quick and your opposition.
Jim Carver, I live in Powhatan County, and I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Okay, next.
George Steele, Spotsylvania, I'm against this.
Okay, next. All
My
right.
name's David Majur. I live in Franklin County, and I oppose this highly unconstitutional bill.
Okay, everybody has spoken. It's now before the body. Is there, now apparently we need a.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
with the Servell amendments, I move that we adopt, as this is a substitute, and I would move the bill.
Mr. Chairman. They got to go to, does it have to go to finance?
No.
Okay, yeah, Senator Stewart. Yeah, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barker, you're one of the most reasonable people I know in the Virginia Senate. And I mean that with all sincerity. My concern with this bill, and I want to make sure you understand what happens here, and I'd like to ask you to consider an amendment. We in Virginia, we in the United States, under our Constitution, are guaranteed that we get due process of law. And what that means is we get to come into court, we get to confront our accusers, we get to ask questions of the witnesses, we get to bring witnesses in on our own behalf to try to protect our liberty. And what this bill does is it flips that on its head. You understand that. This takes away an individual's right under the Constitution to have due process of law, but it's fixable. What this allows is for an attorney for the Commonwealth or a law enforcement officer, and a law enforcement officer is not defined, but I'm sure it is somewhere, to petition a magistrate and to say Senator Barker is a substantial risk to himself or somebody else. They get that order entered, and then they go to Senator Barker's home. Anything they see in plain view that's illegal, they could charge Senator Barker with, and that's not the substance of the bill, but it's another violation of the Constitution. What I'm asking you to consider is this. Give that person their day in court in advance. Bring that person in on a petition. Bring that person in on a TDO. Bring that person in and get them before the court and let the court adjudicate this as to whether or not there's substantial risk, allowing that individual to have witnesses and present and confront his accusers as we get in this country. One of the few places we get a right like that, and it's an incredibly important right. And when we erode that, I think it's incredibly dangerous. In fact, this bill probably scares me more than any bill I've seen in the Senate of Virginia and the General Assembly in the 12 years I've been here, because of the mischief that could be done with it. So I ask that you consider that. Bring that individual into court before you search his home, before you have him adjudicated, and let them defend themselves.
Senator Morrissey.
Senator Barker, I'm going to support the bill, but I want to echo some of the comments to the far left, as in the direction, not the ideology.
I've never been accused of being the far left, Joe.
I, too, have concern about the length and breadth of a search inside somebody's home. And that aspect of this bill needs, I think, a substantial amount of work. But I think I am going to vote to get it out of committee. But like Senators McDougal and Stewart, allowing the search warrant to be issued to go into a home, as opposed to just bringing the person in like we do in a TDO, it makes me want to do more than simply pump the brakes. So I'm supported to get out of committee, but it needs some work, at least in that aspect of it.
Senator Shervill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to make clear that I only speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure most of the folks on this side don't hate gun owners. And we don't consider everybody extremists or fanatics. There's a lot of hyperbole getting thrown around here, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on social media, but it didn't come in from a lot of our accounts. I just want to make that clear, number one. Number two, the standard in order to get one of these orders is clear and convincing evidence for a final order. I know for the initial order it's probable cause, but for the final order it is clear and convincing evidence, which is a heightened evidentiary standard It's higher than a preponderance of the evidence, which is the standard which somebody can render a $10 million judgment against you. So we have a higher standard here because it involves somebody's constitutional rights. I would also point out that under existing Virginia law that's been on the books for decades, somebody can be kicked out of their home based on an allegation from one person, untested. You can be kicked out of your house right now, today, and be required to forfeit or give your guns to somebody else. You're not required to surrender them. But that's existing law, and I don't hear anybody saying that that's crazy or out of line or unconstitutional or whatever. That's our law today. From my point of view, this is just a small extension of that, okay? Instead of you having to give the gun to your neighbor or give it to your kid, the government's going to hold it for a little while. And that's really, from my point of view, the only difference.
Okay.
And I don't know what the law or the process is in Florida. Florida can do whatever Florida wants to do. With the amendments we just made, we built some due process protections into this law to make it easier. Next thing I'll say is that the government often comes into people's homes for lots of reasons. I've had criminal cases begin because somebody had a medical emergency, for example, an overdose. And medical personnel get in there, law enforcement have to come in, things are discovered, it happens. Code enforcement violations, the government has to go into people's homes sometimes when people are hoarding things or they've got code violations in their houses, unsafe conditions with some notice. The last thing I'll say is to the extent anybody out here is concerned that somebody might abuse someone, that somebody might lie in order to go and get somebody's weapons away from them, you always have your civil remedies. You can sue them for malicious prosecution, you can sue them for abuse of process, and you can get money against them. So there are protections for people that abuse this out there. From my point of view, people are making a lot bigger deal out of this than it really is.
Okay, now, is there any further discussion? Is there ready to vote?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
my light
Obenchain.
is, I think, lit up. You know, first of all, the legislation does not create a civil cause of action. In other instances, we have expressly made it clear that there is a civil cause of action where somebody misuses or inappropriately uses a statutory scheme. Malicious prosecution is not available for this instance. This is a civil proceeding, not a criminal proceeding. I think that is one glaring omission. Second of all, in response to the comments made by Senator Morrissey, I appreciate his expression of concern and the desire to continue to work on this bill, but that's what this committee is for, is to get it right. We have outstanding staff. We have had concerns expressed, and I do not understand the rush to get this bill out of here, notwithstanding the fact that serious problems with this bill have been identified, and for some apparent political reason, there's a desire to move along a bill that is deeply and fundamentally flawed in order to advance a political agenda or to avoid some kind of political blowback. And I think that this committee takes seriously its work, and it should be allowed to continue to work on this bill, and accordingly, I move that this bill be passed by for the day.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded, the bill be passed by for the day. Is there a substitute motion?
That is my substitute motion.
Okay, all right. All in favor of the motion to pass it by for the day, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? No. Noes have it. Is there, Senator Chafin?
Mr. Chairman, could we have a recorded vote on that?
All in favor, yes, go back. All in favor of the motion to pass by for the day, vote aye. All opposed, vote no.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
point of
yeah,
order.
Senators-
We already had a motion to pass by that we rejected earlier. I think the motion itself was out of order because we've already voted it before.
Well, he's asked for a recorded vote. Okay.
All right.
All right. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The
Ayes 4, noes 9.
noes are 9, so the bill will not be passed by for the day. We have before us Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say first, I have an enormous amount of respect for the patron on this bill. I'm probably not going to be I'm actually not going to be supporting any of the bills that are seeking to take guns from law-abiding citizens. But the reason I'm wanting to make my comments is because I see here in the room some of our finest law enforcement members. And we're living in a time, Mr. Chairman, where politicians, sometimes unwittingly, sometimes unknowingly, maybe sometimes intentionally, are placing a larger target on the back of these fine men and women that protect each and every one of us law-abiding citizens. We're living in a time when an individual who has never done anything, who has committed no wrong, who has committed no harm, who has no criminal history, can have to endure this type of process and this type of procedure without any real due process of law. So I ask the committee, Mr. Chairman, when someone who is law-abiding, who has no criminal history, but who is sick and fed up with it, sick and fed up with this process, when they don't answer the door, Mr. Chairman, is this committee asking that door be knocked down and find out what's on the other side of it? Is that what this bill is all about, is to find out what's on the other side of that door? Are we asking our law enforcement, Mr. Chairman, to go up Ruby Ridge Drive and to beat down that door and find out what's on the other side of it in the privacy of that man or woman's home?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion? Yeah,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
McDougal.
Speaking to the bill. Mr. Chairman, I think the biggest change of direction from where we are, the articulations that Senator Servell made were ones where a person voluntarily called you to your house. If this law is to pass, it'll be a time when you've not been accused of a criminal offense, you've not invited somebody to come to your house, there's been no allegation of criminal activity. And whether you live in rural Virginia or downtown Richmond or downtown Norfolk, the government will come in and be able to search your house, and you've not been accused or alleged to have committed any criminal offense. Every Virginian should be afraid.
Okay, now is there a motion? The motion is before the body to report the substitute. Okay, all right, all in favor of the motion to report the substitute, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The clerk will call the roll. I mean, we'll close the roll.
Ayes 9, nays 5.
Okay, ayes 9, 5 noes. All right, is that right? Yeah. The motion passes. The bill is reported to the floor. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next bill has to do with Senator Servell's Senate Bill 35. First, I'd ask that Senate Bill 505,
Mr. Chairman.
506, 450, and 615, who are related bills on local authority, be rolled into Senate Bill 35, and there's a substitute. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Now, the motion is made to adopt the substitute to the bills that have been rolled together. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Oberchain.
Mr. Chairman.
McDougal.
Point of order, hasn't it been the historical courtesy of this committee to take up members who are not on the committee first? I see a number who've been here for almost 2 hours. Shouldn't we continue to grant them the courtesy of taking their bills up first?
When we finish with this last gun bill, we will. Go ahead.
I need one vote for the incorporation.
Okay. We need to have a roll call vote on rolling the bills together and to have the substitute in place of Senate Bill 35. All in favor, there's been a motion made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Vote aye.
Mr. Chairman.
And all opposed, vote no.
Point of order. rolling the bills together is one thing, but agreeing to a substitute that we've not seen, I'm not willing to vote for that. Can
Okay.
you at least give us the substitute to look at?
All right.
Or is that another courtesy we're not getting today?
You can look at, we'll strike the vote, take a look at the substitute. The motion is to adopt the substitute.
There you go.
Okay? All right, all in favor of the motion?
You want me to explain the substitute?
Well, you want to explain explain the substitute?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 35 substitute you have in front of you basically incorporates all the components of the bills that were wrapped into this bill with a couple minor tweaks. So if you have the substitute in front of you, the meat of the bill starts on page 2 on line 34. Line 34 would give a locality the authority to regulate possession, carrying, or transportation of firearms, ammunition, components, or combination, A, in a building owned or used by a locality for government purposes. Number 2, by any public park owned by the locality. Or number 3, any public street, road, alley, sidewalk, or right-of-way or place that's being used for a permitted event. So what that's aimed at is, for example, say a farmer's market or a parade or some kind of a protest. And it only applies to the streets or alleyways that are adjacent to that specific event. That's what subsection E does there, lines 34 through 41.
Mr. Chairman?
So,
Just
can I finish?
let
Well,
Senator Sherrill complete explaining the bill.
Let me finish explaining, we'll get to questions. Subsection F requires, that's lines 48 through 53, requires there to be notice published at all entrances of the building or the park, or all other places where people might enter, so that they're on notice that firearms are prohibited from that location. And then the other changes are on line 62. This was Senator Edwards' bill, I believe, which says that any guns that are acquired pursuant to a gun buyback program have to be destroyed unless the owner indicates in writing they would like the gun sold at public auction. Current law requires the gun to be sold at public auction if a locality chooses to have a buyback program. And the last part, the enactment clause at the very end of the bill, that repeals a statute from 2000, which prohibits localities from suing gun manufacturers. It does authorize the state to sue gun manufacturers, but it says localities cannot bring independent actions of their own. And not just manufacturers, so we're clear. Manufacturers, distributors, dealers, sellers, or trade associations. That's what the substitute does, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any discussion on the substitute? Is there a motion that we adopt the substitute?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Overchain.
Mr. Chairman, I had, while I disagreed, I understood that the purpose of this legislation in the past was to address volatile gatherings like the one which occurred in Charlottesville. Am I to understand that the scope of this is now expanded to the point where it's intended to address farmers markets and art shows?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentleman like this. First of all, there was legislation introduced which is much broader than this that would give localities sort of plenary authority to regulate firearms in any fashion whatsoever. This substitute does not do that. It scopes it way down to simply focus on public buildings, parks, and permitted events. Now, with regard to specifics, I believe in Charlottesville there was a park involved where the Robert E. Lee statue is, and which that park has also been a focus of some other public safety problems. It is also, yes, aimed at, for example, protests or parades. In the city of Alexandria, we had, I will say we had 4 or 5 people, or 3 or 4 people that decided to show up at the Alexandria Farmers Market with AR-15s. My father and my child was there, my son. I received probably about 20 different emails from people that were very upset about it. And so that's why it's broader than just protests. It's also include any kind of permitted events that a locality might put on. And so, yes, that's the intent. Any event, it could be a craft show, it could be anything the locality has to issue a permit for.
Sherrill, there's adequate notice that has to be provided with regard to the building or a public street,
Right.
or a permanent event or public park or any permanent event,
Right,
right?
and that's lines 48 through 53 requires notice and posting.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
I'd move the substitute.
Is there, all in favor of the substitute? You have to have roll call vote. All in favor, vote. Okay. All right, adopt the substitute by voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, any further discussion? Anybody in favor of the bill? Anybody against the bill? Okay, line up, 5 minutes each. Secretary Moran.
I think the last time today. Mr.
Your
Chairman,
last time,
members of the
okay.
committee, on behalf of the Governor Northam's administration, we are very much in support of providing localities the ability to impose reasonable and constitutional restrictions on firearms, certainly buildings, parks, permit events, legislation the Senate Deeds has carried in the past in the light of what happened in Charlottesville. Those efforts that we've supported in the past, and we'll review this substitute as the process proceeds, but again, we support reasonable restriction. We support the ability of localities to pass reasonable and constitutional restrictions on firearms. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Senator Norman.
Mr. Secretary,
Senator.
does it cause you any consternation that we have approximately 131 localities across Virginia and that we could end up with 131 different interpretations and application of this law?
Senator, I think we rely on our localities to make a variety of decisions. I think of Fairfax County, they appropriate and dispense over $1 billion budget decisions that they have to make. So $3 billion? $3 billion. So, Senator, I'll just say that we ask our localities to make a lot of important decisions now, so I have confidence that they will impose reasonable and constitutional restrictions.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Senator Norman.
What does a $3 billion budget have about trespassing on the Second Amendment rights?
Senator, I use that as an example. We ask our localities to make very important decisions now with respect to not only budgets, but law enforcement, public safety decisions, education decisions. This should be no different.
Last question, Mr. Chairman.
As long as it's the last question. Senator Norman.
Remind Mr. Secretary, I came out of local government, so I've got some mild understanding of it. But if the Sisters of Poor Clare, the Poor Sisters of Clare want to conduct a craft show, a locality would have the ability to restrict firearms if they had to permit it?
Jim, we're giving broad authority to localities. I think that's what contemplated in this legislation.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Next, continue.
Good morning, Lori Haas with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. For all the reasons articulated, we support the bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, next.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. As a person who has applied for a permit, I understand the permit process is to allow the locality to set up a series of rules and regulations as to what you are permitted to do. I have been told what my events were permitted to do. If the locality decides that the event should be gun-free, then they should be allowed to say so. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
I'm Molly Voigt with Giffords, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. Mr. Attorney General.
Yes, sir. The Attorney General strongly supports this bill. We strongly believe it's constitutional. We have extensively reviewed the Second Amendment literature and case law, and I'm not aware of any significant constitutional objection to this bill.
Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Catherine Cable. I'm a constituent of Senator Edwards in Roanoke, and I have been threatened by gun extremists, and yes, they were gun extremists, who paraded at the entrance to my neighborhood as an attempt to silence me. I have been threatened with people directly parading with AR-15s outside of my home. These people came to my home, they knocked on my door, and they looked at my windows after they had been asked to leave. We have a major problem with gun intimidation in the city of Roanoke. Thank you for this bill.
Yeah.
We need a strong localities bill.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Pam Pouchot. When I go anywhere in the state of Virginia, there are speed limits that I have to obey, and they change from block to block. We have counties that are dry in Virginia. I don't know which ones they are. Heaven forbid I should drink in the wrong county. We need to give the localities their right to control things. I have heard for years that we need to have local control. Now that we're asking for local control, they're saying we need state control. One or the other, but we do need control. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next. You for or against? Is anybody else in favor? Okay, we'll go to the people who are not in favor.
John Ring, Henrico. The gun-free zones are where we're having all the problems. We're making more gun-free zones. Good luck with that.
Okay. Phil?
Philip Van Cleve, VCDL. Look, there haven't been any problems with gun owners carrying in these various places. And in some counties, as few as 2 people could set up basically what's a civil right and say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. We've got counties that have 3 people on a board of supervisors. This is a civil right. It should be uniform across the state. Right now, I can learn the gun laws in the state, and I know that I'm good when I'm traveling. I don't have to worry that if I'm in Norfolk, I violated a law if I stepped into one of their parks. You know, because some of the penalties for gun violations are large, you really don't want it complicated. I mean, in the bad old days when we had this kind of stuff, you really needed a special map to figure out what to do as you traveled the state. You couldn't carry in a park here, you couldn't open carry here, it went on and on and on. And it's a civil right. Let's keep it uniform and protect gun owners from running afoul of these things. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Pyle, Dinwiddie County citizen. As a concealed handgun permit holder, I have no felonies. I've never broken a law besides maybe a speeding infraction in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Just because I take my family to a park or a farmer's market doesn't mean I give up the right to defend myself. I have a responsibility to protect my family. I understand that evil lies in the hearts of men, not in an inanimate machine that might be in my pocket. Thank God that there was a concealed weapons permit holder in the church down in Texas. Otherwise, we'd be mourning the death of dozens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Scott Jenkins, Culpeper. The last thing we need are more gun-free zones. Whether it's expanded background checks, that's a step toward gun registration. If you really want to make an impact, step back for a minute and look at your concealed carry permit law. Who thought that up? Do we give driver's licenses with no actual road test? You can go online and get a certificate and obtain a concealed carry permit. Now, that's a bit ridiculous if you ask me, but we're not addressing things like that. People who know nothing really about guns, who don't understand firearms, are trying to create such bills as this. The fact is, when you ask the people outside in the blue and gray uniforms, the men and women of our armed services or the deputies across the state, when they're not on the clock and can speak freely, we're not asking for gun control. And you didn't get a mandate when you got elected in November on the Second Amendment. You might have got it on other issues. But you're seeing the resolutions throughout the state, and I hope you listen. Otherwise, thank you for the first step toward flipping us red in this state, because you're not hearing it. We don't need more gun-free zones. There are sensible alternatives to work through, but hearing what people like Senator Chafin or McDougal said make perfect sense. Listen to those who are actually operating in this realm and not the left-wing liberal agenda that's being shoved with all the money from out of state. I cannot stress enough, the law that you just talked about, the red flag, without due process, you are signing the death warrant of citizens and possibly officers by the way that you implement bills without the proper care. You need to vet those bills and properly have the safeguards in place.
Okay, next.
Hey, good morning. My name's Sean Llewellyn. I'm a citizen of Goochland County. I'm opposed to all these gun restrictions you're putting on honest citizens. I think that those of you that were in the prosecutorial roles back in the 1990s should realize that Project Exile was a very good, effective way to get illegal guns off the street and get them out of the criminals' hands. So if you're going to impose restrictions on honest gun-owning citizens, you should at least look at more harsh consequences for folks with illegal guns. If I remember correctly, You added 5 years to any prison sentence that was related to a crime that was committed by somebody with an illegal gun. So while we're sitting here trying to penalize the honest citizens of Virginia, think about all of the illegal guns that are on the street and all the bad guys that have them. And instead of shoving these things down our throats, think about prosecuting those people. And thank you for your time. I wholeheartedly reject all these things that you all want to do. So
All right,
thank you very much.
Thank you. We have 13 seconds, but go ahead.
Candy Eubank, Doswell, Virginia. I am a licensed NRA instructor. I am a licensed A Girl and a Gun instructor. I'm a range safety officer. I encourage any woman on this side or any man on this side that wants to educate and learn more about firearms safety. I will be happy to instruct them free of charge if it's a
Okay.
woman.
All right, thank you.
I oppose this bill. I also would like to state that I am a concealed permit holder, and the reason I have a concealed permit hold is because I want to take care of my family and myself. Law enforcement, I have a story to tell. I don't have enough time to tell it. Law enforcement couldn't get there in time for me.
Okay.
That is why I carry, and I feel like every person who has a concealed holder permit should be allowed. The gentleman who had the issue with the AR outside in front of his children, isn't there a brandishing law on the books currently? If he feared for his life at that time, he absolutely should have called the police and had somebody arrested on brandishing. This law here is now devastating concealed carry and the right for me to protect myself and my family.
Thank you very much. Just state your name and your position because the time has expired.
James DeLong, opposed.
Okay.
I'm afraid I have to go a little bit further than stating my name. My name is Harold Fall, again from Williamsburg. If I'm a concealed weapon carry permit holder and I'm at the Williamsburg Farmers Market and someone starts pulling out a weapon, what am I supposed to do? Throw zucchinis at them? No, I'm going to protect every single person in this room with my talents and my weapon to take them down as the gentleman and people did in the White Settlement Church in Texas, to pass a law restricting us so we cannot protect ourselves when there is a lunatic in that crowd in Williamsburg Farmers Market is absolutely wrong. One other point, I want to go back to red flag very quickly because what you do if a wife...
Your time has expired, but go ahead.
But if a
Wrap
woman
it up.
passes on her husband's weapons because she feels threatened by him, now you've created her into a felon.
Okay. Thank you. Just state your name and your position real quick. Time's expired.
I'm Dr. Robert White. I reside in James City County, and I just want to mention criminals love gun-free zones because there's nobody there to shoot back at them.
Okay. Next, very quickly.
Tom Grash, King William County. I agree with everything that gentleman just said. Gun-free zones are not the deal. We don't
Okay.
want them. Don't do it.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Serval, will wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things in waste of one I just heard. First of all, I'm a 13th generation Virginian, and I don't consider any of this that we've done either today or this bill to be part of some radical left-wing agenda. These bills that we have passed, including this one, are supported by upwards of 80% of the public. These are not bills that are outrageous.
Okay, all right,
Now,
let's
the point
keep it
is,
down.
Mr. Chairman, that this bill takes into account the differences within our Commonwealth. It doesn't require any locality to do anything. It simply gives localities the choice to do something. In the city of Alexandria, they don't want AR-15s at their farmers market, okay? Maybe they have AR-15s at the Culpeper Farmers Market, but in Alexandria, we don't do that, okay? And so localities want the option to do this. With regard to what's occurred in the past, there's video of people in the protests in Charlottesville shooting at the bystanders. We don't need people marching with weapons when there's people on the other side who aren't happy they're there. It's not the kind of situation that we ought to be able to have firearms. This will take care of that public safety risk. So from my perspective, Mr. Chairman, it's a good bill. I think we need to give localities this choice. If some other localities in Virginia don't want to take the story, they don't have to use it.
Okay, thank you. We need, the motion is to incorporate those 4 bills, 505,
We already did that. We already did it.
We need to record about 505, 506, 450, and 615 to be incorporated into Senate Bill 35. All in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Okay, clerk will call the roll.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay, and the second one is to okay, report Senate Bill 35, which as a substitute, the
So
substitute.
moved.
All, second, okay, Senator Norman?
I'm sorry, has it been seconded, sir?
Has been seconded? Yeah, it's been seconded.
Okay. If I may speak to the bill, sir.
Yeah, please.
Two things concern me. They hold up the violence in Charlottesville as an example of what went on. If I recall, while there was a demonstration of firearms, the people that were injured in Charlottesville were either injured by a car, assault and battery, or use of a pipe, not one gun. So that is a very poor example. Number two, having come out of local government, here is a concern that I have, and I appreciate that there are differences between various localities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. When we pass a statute that is applicable and defining for all of Virginia, then there is a consistency. And the only way that that can be changed, as such as you all are moving with changing the one gun a month law, local government, board of supervisors and councils tend to turn over, and where you have, say, 5 members and initially you have 3 that want to amend the Second Amendment, and the next election cycle you get 3 who want to preserve the Second Amendment. It is much more cumbersome in a local government situation where you have a significant turnover as opposed to having a statewide application.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak briefly to the permitted event section of the code. And in fact, this was requested by law enforcement. In the city of Richmond, about a month after the Charlottesville events, there was another rally that was expected to be worse than it actually turned out. I will admit that. But the state, it was on Monument Avenue, which is a residential street. The state could ban weapons on the circle where the Robert Lee statue is because that's state property. Across the street was city property, and the city was powerless to ban weapons there. Across the street were not only homes with children, but a daycare center. And there were families who were concerned based on what they saw happening in Charlottesville, but their law enforcement was powerless to do the exact same thing that the state could do across the street. And so the city of Richmond's sheriff requested one of the original versions of this bill to address that very concern. If the state can ban weapons on state property during permanent events, then why shouldn't our local governments have the exact same authority to take care of the surrounding area?
Okay. All right, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first of all, the presentation made clear that this bill is not about public safety. This bill is all about appearance. That's it. It's because somebody was freaked out by somebody open carrying. Lady mentioned somebody peeking in her window. I think that any member of law enforcement here, if they were called about that, they would have picked that person up, arrested them, and charged them with the appropriate crime. It is a beautiful world in which passing a local ordinance banning guns at farmers market is going to keep somebody with murder in their heart out of that farmers market. What it is going to do is keep the law-abiding citizens who are exercising their Second Amendment rights from carrying in that farmer's market. I would go further to say that, it is really becoming more about speech, perhaps even than the Second Amendment. We have seen today and during the course of the first few days of this General Assembly, reactions to people who want to come to the General Assembly just to express their views. And because their views have something to do with our Second Amendment rights, we have flipped out and adopted all kinds of new policies and change the way that we do things, because we've got people from across Virginia who have a different opinion from some members of the General Assembly. I think that this is, exactly that. It is trying to generate an appearance rather than doing something about public safety. If this was simply about somebody carrying an AR-15 in Alexandria, do something about that. But this doesn't do anything about somebody who is illegally packing a 9mm inside their belt buckle, and this illegally doing so. So, this is all about appearance. It's not about public safety. I would hope that
Mr.
we would
Chairman.
vote
Senator
no.
Boysko.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so
Senator
much.
Boysko.
I represent two of the largest jurisdictions in the state, Loudoun County and Fairfax County, and I have had a number of my constituents. I've heard from public officials and employees who are begging for this. This gives them the ability, if they choose, to say that these should be gun-free areas. And with that, they would have the ability to put in a gun, a metal detector that would help screen folks so that their facilities were safe, just like we have done here in the Commonwealth today. I strongly support this. My constituents strongly support this. I'm so pleased to be able to carry this, and I'm thankful for their patronage.
Senator Morrissey.
Thank you. I support the bill, but I would also like to address something that Senator Obenstein said regarding, I do think it's has a great deal of substance to it. I remember it was a dozen years ago, I sat in the House of Delegates, and some of my colleagues on the opposite side said something that I agreed with very strongly. They were decrying the actions in Washington, D.C., and they said those closest to the govern best. Washington, D.C. shouldn't be telling Richmond what to do, and Richmond shouldn't be telling the localities what to do. What we're doing is giving the locality the option to say, you cannot come into a particular municipal building, say in the city of Richmond. That may be entirely different and a different perspective in Culpeper, and they should have that right. So it's because I agree with that adage, those closest to the govern best, that I'm supporting this legislation.
Okay, Senator Obenstein.
Mr. Chairman, in response to Senator Boysko's comments, I would hope that if the desire is to set up metal detectors and actually do something to make something a real gun-free zone, that the senator might consider, and it wouldn't affect my vote, but putting metal detectors up and making this applicable only where you're really going to be able to ensure that it's actually a gun-free zone, because this does not do that. This does not make a farmer's market a gun-free zone. It makes it a zone in which law-abiding citizens aren't going to carry guns, but those with murder in their heart are.
Okay, we have a motion before us to adopt the substitute to Senate Bill 35. I'm here. We have a motion to report the substitute. Then moved and seconded to report the substitute. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The clerk will report the vote.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Ayes 9, noes 5. The motion passes. The bill is reported to the floor. My apologies. These are all the gun bills. My apologies to those patrons that had the pleasure of sitting through 2.5 hours of this debate. It's now 11:30. I was hoping we could take up a few. Where's that?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sorry, yes. Okay. My apologies. We were hoping to take some more up, but I guess at 11:30, you'd probably rather go somewhere else.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
While we'll still have a quorum, I had Senate Bill 32 on the docket, which had to do with corporal punishment. I'd like to carry that over for the session.
Okay.
And, so we can do that
Without
right now.
objection, that bill will be carried over for this. Need a roll call vote? All right. All in favor of the motion to pass it by for the year?
Pass it by for the year, Senate Bill 32.
Senate Bill 32. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. You need a roll call vote. Roll call vote is vote yes or no, as the case may be. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, before,
So
Okay.
is the motion
The
to?
the
Mr.
clerk will
Chairman,
call,
Mr.
will
Chairman.
close, the clerk will call the roll.
Point of order, point of
Just a
order.
minute.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I think you said, is the motion to pass it by indefinitely, or is the motion to carry it over?
For the year, to pass it by for the year. What?
Mr. Chairman,
So
that's.
what is the motion? The motion to pass it by for the year, correct?
That's fine.
Yeah, motion to pass it by for the year.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's a motion to carry it over, and there can be a motion to pass it by indefinitely. Those are the options. So I'm trying to figure
My
out.
motion was to carry it over for the year.
All
I
right,
think I
motion
said
to
that pretty
carry it over
clearly.
for the year. All in favor, say aye. Vote yes, yay, or vote nay, as the case may be. All right, the clerk will call the roll.
We got it. Ayes 8, no 6.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your civility and your ability to listen to both sides. And the meeting is adjourned.